Rose and the Secret of the Morning Light. Once upon a time, in a cozy little village surrounded by whispering trees and singing birds, there lived a sweet 12-year-old girl named Rose. Rose was not just any girl. She had a heart like warm honey and eyes that twinkled like stars in a nighttime pond. She always wore a pink ribbon in her curly hair, and wherever she went, the butterflies followed her because even they knew how special she was. But Rose had a very big secret. Not the kind you hide under your bed, not the kind you whisper to a friend. It was the kind of secret that came from heaven. Rose knew how to talk to God every morning. Even before the sun peeked through her curtains, Rose would kneel by her window. The birds would stop chirping just to listen. The wind would hush, and Rose would whisper her prayer. "Good morning, God. Thank you for loving me. Please help me today. Show me what to do, and I'll follow you." And somehow, after every prayer, her heart felt warm and brave, like she could climb the tallest tree in the forest. But Rose didn't live in a fairy tale. Not yet. She lived with her stepmother, Mrs. Grizzle. And oh dear, Mrs. Grizzle was as grumpy as a toad on a rainy day. She frowned at everything's unshine, singing, and especially Rose's prayers. "Praying again? Waste of time," she would snort, clomping around in her loud black shoes. Mrs. Grizzle made Rose clean the chimney, wash the floors, carry heavy buckets of water, and even shine her collection of glass frogs, which croaked every time Rose sneezed. But do you know what? Rose never stopped praying. She prayed when her hands were scrubbing. She prayed when her tummy was rumbling. She prayed when her heart felt like it might break. And one night, when the stars were extra bright, something very strange happened. Mrs. Grizzle stomped into the kitchen and banged her spoon on the table. "Tomorrow," she growled, "you will leave this house. I'm tired of your smiley face and chirpy prayers." Then she pointed her spoon right at Rose. "You'll be gone before the rooster crows." Rose didn't cry. Instead, she walked to her tiny bedroom, pulled out her little pink Bible, and knelt by her bed. "Dear God," she whispered, her voice shaking a little, "I don't know where I'll go, but I know you'll be with me. Please help me find a home, a real one." That night, as Rose slept, she had a dream. In the dream, she saw a path made of glowing flowers and golden leaves. At the end of the path stood a kind woman with snow-white hair, holding a lantern and a basket of warm bread. The woman smiled and said, "Come, Rose, I've been waiting." The next morning, just as the rooster crowed, Rose packed her small bag with a piece of bread, her ribbon, and her Bible. She tiptoed out of the house and waved goodbye to the trees, the birds, and even the grumpy glass frogs. She didn't know where to go, but her feet felt light, as if they knew the way. As she walked down the old dirt road, something magical began to happen. Butterflies flew in a line above her. A squirrel waved at her from a tree branch. Even the clouds in the sky seemed to part to let the sun shine just for her. And then there it was, At the end of the path, just like in her dream, stood a little cottage wrapped in roses. The garden was blooming with pink, yellow, and blue flowers that looked like they were smiling. And on the porch stood the same woman from her dream. "My stars!" the woman exclaimed. "You made it! I knew God would bring you." Her name was Grandma Joy, and she had been praying for a little girl to come live with her. Rose's eyes filled with happy tears as she hugged Grandma Joy. The cottage smelled like cinnamon rolls and laughter. There was a rocking chair just for her, and a warm blanket with her name sewn on it in gold thread. That night, they knelt beside the fireplace and prayed together. "Thank you, God," Rose said, smiling up at the ceiling. "You always hear me, even when it's hard, even when I don't know where to go." The next morning, Rose woke up to birds singing and the smell of pancakes. She had found her home, and she knew deep down in her heart, God never forgot her, not even for a second. And as for Mrs. Grizzle, well, something surprising happened. After Rose left, her house felt cold and lonely. One day, she found one of Rose's little prayers scribbled on a piece of paper. She read it out loud. "Dear God, help me forgive others and help them learn to love you too." Mrs. Grizzle stared at the paper a long time, and then, for the first time in many, many years, she cried.